Okay, I'd like to call to order the Development Review Commission meeting for July 6th. Kat, could you call the roll?
Shear,
Here.
Arthur,
Here.
Poinsett,
Here.
Sangre,
Here.
Lyons,
Here.
Deuce,
Here.
and Kirk Smith is excused this evening.
Did he have a note?
He did.
Okay, good. Our first order of business is findings, and our first finding is on LU 22-0024, a request for a major variance and modification to an approved partition, LU 20-0038, to eliminate a condition for approval requiring flag lot screening fences along the side property lines. This site is located at 1880 Twin Points Road, legal designation 21E09BD02712. The staff coordinator is Ellen Davis, planners. Any comments on the findings, guys?
I would move approval of the draft findings, conclusions, and order for LU 22-0024-2028 regarding the application you just discussed.
I will second that.
Thank you. Kat?
Shear,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangre,
Yes.
Lyons,
Abstain.
Deuce,
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. It passes. Our next findings is AP 22-03. It's a tree permit number 499-22-0000160-tree. A request for a hearing appealing staff's tentative decision to approve a type 2 tree application, same number above, to remove 4 Douglas firs 30-inch-52-inch DBH in order to construct a new single-family dwelling on the site. This site located at 529 8th Street, 21E03CA08500. The staff coordinator was Daphne Sissel, associated planner. So, Evan, if we have a motion to approve, we're approving the findings. Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Kat?
Shear,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangre,
Yes.
Lyons,
Abstain.
Deuce,
Abstain.
Findings are adopted. Our next order of business is to adopt findings on AP 22-04, permit number 499-22-0001583, a request for a hearing appealing staff's tentative decision to approve type 2 tree application, same number as above, to remove 5 trees, 1 36-inch big leaf maple and 4 Douglas firs, varying sizes from 23-inch to 47-inch DBH, in order to construct a new single-family dwelling at the site. The site is located at 541 8th Street, legal designation 21E03CA08501. The staff coordinator is Daphne Sissel. Did you review the findings?
I will move to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Kat, could you poll us, please?
Shear,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangre,
Yes.
Lyons,
Abstain.
Deuce,
Abstain.
Okay, we've adopted findings. Our next order of business is a public hearing on LU 21-0078, a request for approval of the following for a new park, Rasic. Major development conditional use permit, athletic field, skate park, and lighting, 65 space parking lot. Also, we're asking for a minor development for construction of maintenance buildings, picnic shelters, restrooms, dugouts, play areas, and associated site improvements, including utilities and walkway pathways, and the removal of 28 trees. This site is located at 18011 Stafford Road, legal designation 21E16D01100. The staff coordinator is Evan Franstead, senior planner.
Mr.
Evan?
Chairman, I'll read the hearing procedure.
Thank you.
This land use request is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria that staff has identified as applicable to the request. It was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. Please specifically identify to the commission the criteria standards you're addressing so the commission may consider the testimony in relation to those criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise any constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Public hearing process is as follows. First, there'll be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that is the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following their deliberation. Now, those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed that persons are testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. As stated in the public notice, the deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. I now ask to the commission members a potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC members do not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that a future business relationship could arise, the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through relative as defined in OS 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit. If you have any bias on the application, any financial conflicts of interest, then please state your business or employment. Chair Scheer.
Thank you. First off, I want to make a correction of oversight. I want to welcome our two new commissioners, John Dews and Tim Lyons. So, welcome.
Yes.
Since you're new tonight, we'll do this a little different. I'll declare, we'll have Randy declare, then we'll go Bruce, Dwight, and then we'll have the two new guys go last so you can kind of see what you're supposed to do. When I started, I always messed this up. My name's Jeff Scheer. My occupation is I'm a retired contractor. I've visited the site many times because I live in the neighborhood. I've had no ex parte contacts. I have no bias and no financial conflict of interest. Randy?
Thank you. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney at the Portland office of Bullivan Hauser Bailey. I have driven by the site in the ordinary course over many years, but I have not made a site visit. I've not had any ex parte contacts. I have no financial interest or disqualifying bias.
Bruce?
My name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm an occupational safety consultant specializing in heavy construction. I have not visited the site. I probably have driven by it many times, so Stafford Road. I do not have any ex parte contacts, no biases, no financial conflict or interest.
My name is Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired civil engineer. I have great familiarity with the site. I lived in that neighborhood, but no longer live in the Palisades neighborhood. I have visited the site. I have no financial or business relationship with the project. I have had no ex parte discussions with anyone related to this, and I feel that I have no bias related to this project.
John?
I'm John Dews. I am an architect. I have driven by the site, but I haven't made a specific visit to it. I had no ex parte contacts. I don't have any bias in regards to the project and no financial conflict.
Thank you. Tim?
Tim Lyons. I am an attorney with McDowell, Rackner, Gibson. I have not visited the site, though I also have driven past it. I have had no ex parte contacts, no bias, and no financial interest in the outcome of the project.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioner's right to consider the application? Seeing none, Senior Planner Evan Franstead with staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Yeah, that works. All right. And members of the commission, before I give my summary of the staff report, there are two new public comments that we received today that need to be entered into the record. Exhibit, which were emailed to you, hopefully this afternoon, you had a chance to read them. Exhibit G200 is public comment in opposition from Randall Yamada, representing Stafford Hamlet and the Stafford Tualatin Valley CPO. The commenter did not list any applicable criteria, but generally expressed concerns regarding traffic, parking, hours of operation, lighting, sensitive lands, stormwater and erosion, which are all addressed in the staff report dated June 24th. The commenter also expressed concerns regarding the synthetic turf, concrete work for the skate park, and cited the Lusher Area Master Plan, which are not applicable to the review of this application. The Lusher Area Master Plan includes Receipt Park, this site. The purpose of the master plan is to provide guidance for future development of the area. However, the proposed development of the site is reviewed based on the P&A zone standards that apply to proposed development. For example, major park improvements that include an athletic field and skate park are allowed in the P&A with a conditional use permit. Exhibit G201 is a public comment in opposition from Rick Cook that expresses concerns for traffic, access, parking, utilities, and sensitive lands, all of which are addressed in the staff report. So now, my summary of the staff report. The site is approximately 9.66 acres with frontage on Stafford Road, a minor arterial street, and Atherton Drive and Ridgepoint Drive, both local streets. The site is zoned P&A for parks and natural area and is vacant. Properties to the north are zoned R15 and public function and developed with the church and Lake Oswego School District sports field. Properties to the south across Atherton Drive are located outside city limits in Clackamas County's rural residential farm forest zone and are developed with Shipley Cook Farmstead Nursery. The property to the east across Stafford Road is Lusher Farm, which is a park and agricultural development owned by the city and located outside city limits in Clackamas County's exclusive farm use zone. Properties to the west and southwest are developed with residential dwellings and private open space tract, all zoned R15. The site includes sensitive lands that have been delineated. That includes delineated Class 1 Resource Protection District, RP District, with a stream corridor and wetland, consisting of the Atherton tributary and a Resource Conservation District for a tree grove. So the blue area is the RP District, and the green area is the RC District with a tree grove. So here's the site plan. The proposed athletic field, skate park, and lighting for the outdoor recreation facilities and activities, and the 65-space parking lot are considered a major park improvement that require a conditional use permit for major development. The proposed maintenance building, picnic shelter, restroom, dugouts, play area, walkways, and utilities in the sensitive lands are permitted uses in the P&A zone are classified as minor park improvements. In addition, the project includes 56% or 5.42 acres of open space and landscaping with a variety of trees and street trees, shrubs and ornamental grasses in the proposed landscaping areas. The proposed athletic field is made of artificial turf and can be used either as a soccer field or 2 softball fields. The skate park is approximately 10,000 square feet in area, located in the northeast area of the park, and includes a variety of skateboarding amenities. The conditional use criteria. So conditional use is an activity that is permitted in the zone, but which, because of some characteristics, are not entirely compatible with other uses in the zone, cannot be permitted outright. Staff found the conditional use criteria were met because the P&A zone dimensional standards, including setbacks, maximum height, and maximum lot coverage, are met. The standards specific to the major public facilities are met. The site is physically capable of accommodating the proposed use with adequate space for the site for the athletic field, skate park, parking lot, and associated improvements. The functional characteristics of the proposed use are such that it can be made reasonably compatible with uses in the vicinity. A parking analysis was performed to determine the number of required parking spaces for the park. The proposed athletic field is a single multi-purpose field that can be used either as a soccer field or 2 softball fields. The study found that a single soccer field has a higher parking demand at 62 parking spaces than the softball field at 50 spaces. The skate park is expected to generate an additional 3 parking spaces. The playground is expected to be secondary to the softball soccer field rather than a destination, therefore additional parking spaces are not needed. The study found that the use will generate a total demand of 65 parking spaces. The proposed parking lot includes 65 parking spaces. A traffic impact analysis was performed to address potential traffic impacts. The proposed development is anticipated to generate 1 additional trip during the AM peak hour, 16 trips during the PM peak hour, 40 trips during the peak hour on Saturdays, and an average of 72 weekday trips. According to the operational analysis conducted in the study, the proposed development will have a minimal impact in the nearby intersection within the study area. All evaluated intersections were reported to be operating acceptable during the current conditions and will continue to do so following the completion and occupancy of the proposed development. Queues expected to occur at each intersection during the peak hours are expected to fit within the available storage provided in the roadways. The engineering staff concurs with the applicant's traffic impact analysis and its findings. A vehicle access report was performed to provide analysis on the location of the proposed driveway onto Atherton Drive. Staff found the proposal complies with all the applicable standards. For lighting and noise, the closest residential properties are over 250 feet to the west of the parking lot, over 400 feet from the athletic field, and over 600 feet from the skate park, separated by sensitive lands with trees. The proposed lighting fixtures include directional lighting and cutoffs to minimize light trespass and glare on adjacent residential properties. Lighting for nighttime use of the field activity area will be limited to use only during Oswego Parks and Recreation sanctioned activities to reduce light and noise impacts. The park will be operated in accordance with the Lake Oswego Park rules and monitored by the City Parks and Rec Department to reduce any potential impacts to surrounding properties. Staff finds that due to the ample distance from adjacent uses and management by the Parks and Rec Department in compliance with the park rules, the proposed park will function compatibly with the uses in the area. Staff finds the proposed major park improvements meet the conditional use criteria. And here's the building plan. So these are artistic renderings of proposed maintenance, picnic shelter, restroom, and dugout buildings. The building design standards require that buildings are designed to be compatible in appearance to adjacent structures of good design in regards to materials, setbacks, roof lines, height, and overall proportions. Adjacent structures of good design under consideration for this standard are 4 buildings at Lusher Farm that include the Red Barn and 3 outbuildings. The proposed buildings are typical design for parks in terms of scale and massing, with single-story, pitched metal roofs and concrete and wood, and metal building materials that are complementary to compatible adjacent buildings of good design that are also utilitarian in design. Here's the overall utility plan that shows proposed sanitary sewer, water, and stormwater management. The applicant is proposing installation of a sewer and water line by tunneling under the sensitive lands in the RP district and RC resource. The bore entry and exit points will be located outside the districts. Staff finds that avoidance of any impacts to the resources to install the water and sewer lines are not possible, and proposed bore installation perpendicular to the resource minimizes impacts. The installation of the water and sewer lines will be by tunneling under the resources where tree roots can be avoided. Installation method of the water and sewer lines will not cause adverse effects, and functions and the values of the RC and RP districts will be maintained. For tree removal, the highlighted areas are the proposed type 2 trees. The applicant is requesting to remove 28 trees in order to construct the site improvements, including grading and paving for the proposed park. The applicant will be applying for removal of 1 dead tree and 112 trees that are sweet cherries and English hawthorn with an invasive tree removal permit separate from this application. Staff finds that none of the trees proposed for removal are significant, and removal of trees will not have a significant negative impact on the characteristics of the neighborhood. Staff concludes that the proposed tree removal complies with the tree removal criteria. Recommended condition of approval B3 requires the applicant to submit a final mitigation plan that shows at least 28 mitigation trees, 19 of which must be native. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of LU 21-0078, subject to conditions of approval.
Thank you, Evan. Are there any questions for staff? Dwight? Bruce? Randy?
No questions.
Tim?
Yes, if I could just ask you about the lighting. Are the lights something you would anticipate being on nightly or only for designated events? Is that something that was analyzed?
Yes, that was discussed in the staff report. They'll be on only during designated events for the sports fields, just on as needed.
Is there a time at which they are not allowed to be on, like are they cut off at 10 p.m. or anything like that?
There's park rules that require a certain cutoff, but my understanding that the Parks Department would like to manage it on a case-by-case basis depending on the need. And yeah, they will make sure that they're turned off.
Thank you.
John? No questions. Evan, I've got some questions. My first is referenced as part of the, in your information was an LORAC overlook driveway plan. Can you explain what that is?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
An LORAC overlook driveway plan? Assuming that's something where at the corner of Overlook and Stafford that you're going to do something? Go back to the first slide. There. See where Overlook hits Stafford? I'm assuming that it says in the future, so I'm wondering what that is.
Well, it's not part of this project. The new driveway to Overlook Drive is part of the LORAC project.
The what project?
Oh, sorry, the Lake Oswego Recreation and Aquatic Center project.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so that's
that's further
off-site.
down the street.
That's further down the street. Yeah, it's a different
Okay,
project.
so then the reason why I was asking that is where Overlook hits Stafford, the historic houses there, and in the report it talks about increased pedestrian, you're going to widen the right-of-way and sidewalk on Stafford. Well, right there at the old house at Overlook and Stafford, I've almost got killed about 20 times with cars coming down 40 miles an hour, and you only have about that much room. So the reason why I was asking the question is if this future project was going to do something with the sidewalk there, and there's no sidewalk then on the south side of Overlook either until you get up to the Stafford. So we're not going to do anything there.
Not as part of this project.
The Lake Oswego Recreation Center project will come before you in August.
So the Lake Oswego Recreation will look at that corner?
Well, the development does go to the corner of Stafford and Overlook, and I believe, well, I think there might be an access road off there, but don't quote me on that. So, but anyway, that is coming before you, but it is not part of this project. That is off-site from where we're looking now at Rasique.
Okay, well, I understand, but I'm a little worried about no sidewalk there. You have it from, basically from Grimm's up to Overlook, then you have 90 feet of really, you're taking your life in your hands, and then you've got sidewalk going down, so I think that would be something we should look at. I mean, the city should look at. Let's see. So I'm a little confused. So the Palisades Neighborhood Association documents were in the packet. And in the first of the Palisades Neighborhood Association, right on the first page, says it becomes part of the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan. In that document, it says on page 14 that a multi-jurisdictional traffic review should be done on Stafford. And I know the roundabout is the county's, and I know the county is planning on doing something between the bridge and Childs Road, of which I don't think they've determined what they're going to do. But that will all impact, might make it better, that roundabout. Shouldn't that be taken into consideration?
Will Farley, the city's traffic engineer, is here, and he can answer some questions about that. I mean, obviously, it is the responsibility of this development to show that they meet our traffic impact requirements, which we found they do, as discussed in the staff report.
Well, I don't know if they do. If the Palisades Neighborhood Association documents are part of the comprehensive plan, it talks about a multi-jurisdictional review of traffic along Stafford.
I'm trying to think of the comprehensive plan that you're adding from the Palisades neighborhood. There is a review of Stafford going on separate from this application, funded by the American Rescue Plan funds, that is reviewing Stafford from basically just north of the roundabout to State Street. That is separate from this application. The county is reviewing and designing Stafford Road south of the roundabout from that location to about north of the river. They're looking at widening the roadway, adding bike lanes, realigning Johnson, I think it's Johnson Drive, and Childs Road. They will be looking at either a roundabout or a signal at Childs.
Well, I thought there was something in the documents, and I can't open it right now because we've rolled off the 6th, but there were emails in there from the county. It says they weren't looking at the roundabout.
So,
their review stopped at Childs Road.
So the project that they're doing for south of the roundabout does stop just shy of the roundabout. There is no current plans at the roundabout for any improvements. There was discussion between the city and the county of which jurisdiction that roundabout fell under, and it was determined that it was the county's jurisdiction for any improvements there. As far as I understand, the county is looking at what they need to do for the roundabout. It is not under the city's jurisdiction.
Well, okay. All I'm commenting is that the county said they weren't looking into it.
They currently don't have any plans for it under their transportation system plan or their capital improvement program.
Okay, so my point is, you've got Lucier Farms, you've got the soccer field, you got Lake Ridge, you got the new athletics facility, and you've got this new park. And shouldn't we be looking at the traffic from the bridge, basically, since they've got a new project coming up, and how that impacts that roundabout? Shouldn't it all be taken care of? And isn't the Palisades Neighborhood Association documents part of the comprehensive plan, which requires that?
Well, Mr. Chair, you're looking at me, so I feel I must.
Well, you were looking at me earlier, so
okay.
I've kind of thought.
Yeah, two points, I guess. One is the neighborhood plan and the comprehensive plan is we haven't identified any regulatory comp plan policies in either of them. So from a criteria standpoint, the question is there a regulation in there that is supposed to be applicable to development applications? We have not identified under the language anything that requires any regulatory standard. More importantly, I think to your question, is you're looking at this application and what is the traffic generated by this application upon the surrounding infrastructure?
No, I don't know that. I mean, doesn't 50-03-003.5.c and E, don't they address that you have to look at?
From the development application before you, yes. You can look at it, but you're not.
I read it earlier today, I was gonna bring it up, but I can't get to it.
Yeah, you're not the planning department, nor
I understand.
nor the city engineering department, you know. The question is whether this development application creates an adverse impact upon the infrastructure, upon the streets. And so you look to the traffic reports and the traffic information you'll receive to its impact on Stafford and the Stafford roundabout and that sort of thing. There may be other developments that are occurring along there, but the question for this commission is whether the proposed development is adversely impacting it. And then if so, then you mitigate the impacts of this development.
Yeah, but that's not a fair look if you've got other projects or that are coming that are impacting that same intersection.
Yeah, fairness is, I mean, I take your point, but my advice to the commission is when you look at the standard under 50.07.03.5, okay, you're looking at that is applied for minor and major developments.
Right.
Okay, and whether or not those developments that you're looking at, the development application you're looking at, whether it has an adverse impact, and if so, what mitigation requirements are appropriate. Okay, you're not looking at, it would be beyond the scope, and certainly there's an applicant, a private applicant, is any applicant, public or private, is not required to do a full area traffic analysis to say, well, what are people thinking about developing in this area, and then how should the various jurisdictions solve the problem? The question is, what is this application doing, and is it going to mitigate its impacts?
And to that point, the applicant did prepare a traffic impact study analyzing this development that was scoped with both the city and county staff to determine how far can the impacts be looked at from this development. And that is included in the traffic study.
Well, I guess I didn't read the whole traffic study, but I did see the emails, and they just kind of threw their hands up and said it was fine.
As part of the scoping discussion, there was many talks between the city and the county on who's responsible for the roundabout for land use jurisdiction. And it ultimately came to the county, and they have to, they are also reviewing the study to make sure it follows suit. When we come back before you for LORAC, or the Aquatic Center, they have comments on that study because it is currently being reviewed, and there's expected to be more impacts from that development.
Mr. Chair, and to my point, if I can quote the code, that's what I always like to do. The reviewing authority may impose conditions of approval on a minor development permit or major development permit in one or more of the following circumstances. Now, to your point, subsection 3, the condition is reasonably related to alleviation of a need for public services or facilities created or contributed to by the proposed development. So you're looking at the proposed development application before you.
Okay. All right.
And the same is also in subsection 4. Again, it talks about the proposed development.
Okay. Go ahead.
Has your group done a traffic assessment for the Aquatic Center?
Well, I'm going to ask the commission, that's not the application before you, so.
No, I'm I'm wondering also if this is an inappropriate question, let me just extend it. Have you done an assessment for the aquatic center? And if the aquatic center comes before us in a month or two, are we able to relate these two projects in consideration of the aquatic center?
So this traffic impact study that was provided for this development did consider the aquatic center as it could be completed by the time Receipt Park is occupied. They looked at the impacts of both, and they were instructed to look at the impacts of both Receipt Park by itself and what if the rec center comes in before Receipt Park is done? What are the impacts? So we covered both sides.
Yeah, that's a very important point that I didn't see when I reviewed all of the materials, that in fact you had done an assessment with both of those projects considered. But what you're saying is that in fact was done for this project.
We instructed the applicant to conduct the traffic study with both scenarios.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I just want to be clear, for this project or for the?
For this project.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And LORAC on the other hand. So LORAC also has to look at if LORAC is by itself, or what if Receipt is occupied and operational prior to the recreation center? What is the impacts?
But I guess
I didn't see that in the report either, but that's an important point for me.
Yeah.
Okay, but I guess I would hasten to add that even though the traffic study that you may find looks at both of them, the question to the commission is, what does this development do, and impose conditions to mitigate this development? You'll look at LORAC separately, and you can impose conditions to address its traffic.
Okay. I've got a couple more. Dwight, do you have anything else? No. Okay. What about overflow parking on Atherton Drive? It's posted now, and people park there, and they don't do anything about it.
I can address that. I have received concerns about Atherton Drive and parking. I have evaluated it myself and recognized that the signing may not be easily understood for enforcement. So the city is making an effort to clean up the signage and make sure it's easily understood where parking is allowed and where it is not.
Okay. What about the HOA sign that's there?
Yeah, what, can you elaborate?
Well, right now, the HOA sign is when you pull off is on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And are you gonna put islands in the middle of the road? I
There's,
see on the drawing. I think you've got islands just as you come onto Atherton shown on the drawings.
there's currently the split
Right
at the
there.
roundabout. So the,
See what in the middle, is that what you're showing is an island there?
off of Atherton Drive, that's the roundabout splitting, the splitter on the roundabout. Do you have the aerial?
No, I'm looking right. Yeah,
That's the,
in one.
that's the splitter of the roundabout. Do you have the aerial to show by chance? An aerial?
The HOA has a sign and a hedge on the left-hand side right there.
Which way do I go here? I'm hitting the wrong button.
Yep. Site plan.
So you kind of can't see it underneath the Atherton part, but there is a splitter island on the roundabout itself that separates incoming and outgoing traffic.
No, there's
from-
not. It's open
It's
asphalt.
similar to the northbound off of Stafford. A small median?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I walk my dog there all the time. It's open asphalt.
Go to location map.
So are you adding that island there?
Trying to-
You can't see because it says Atherton.
Atherton in the way.
Yeah, there isn't an island there now. Right where the E is on the right-hand side as you go in is the substation for the gas. And right where the E is, it's open asphalt. So my question is, are you adding an island there?
Not to my
There's no
recollection.
proposal for any changes
Yeah.
right away.
Okay. And the HOA sign on the left-hand side as you pull in?
There's no current plans to change the sign.
Okay. So the islands, no. So when the dog park was there and the entrance was almost in the same location, the traffic to get in and out of the dog park would stop on Atherton and back up Stafford. So you're thinking that's not going to happen now?
When there is an access on Atherton for the dog park?
That used to be the temporary dog park,
Yes.
and the access was almost in the same location. And the traffic would back up onto Stafford for cars waiting to get into the dog park.
I'm not aware of the access being in that location or traffic backing up. They will design the access, or they are instructed to design the access so that vehicles coming off of Stafford will be able to see someone turning in, and they can design their access such that people can turn right into the site in a more fluid manner. Right turns typically take less delay to enter on a site. They have provided, I believe, a queuing analysis in their study
Okay,
that could address that.
okay. I had,
Mr. Chair, while you're thinking about it, I looked up the aerial photo that's on our LL maps, so 2021 aerial photo. And yeah, there is a little median there off where it says Atherton Drive. That it shows.
really?
I can show you the photo. Yeah, it's there. Just let
That's
you
too
know.
far away, I can't see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Also shown on the existing condition survey, which is Exhibit E5.
okay. The new streetlights along Stafford, they're gonna be on the east side, and they won't shine above?
Yeah, they will be on the east side. Let me go to the section of the staff report that talks about that. Okay, so page 31 of the staff report talks about street lighting. Yeah, so applicant submitted a site plan that shows the street lighting will be installed along the east side of Stafford Road along the site frontage. The final design and details were reviewed at time of construction. Construction plan review for the street frontage as required with condition B2. So the final design is still going to be worked out.
So they're gonna be on the east side? So the Lucia Farm side,
That's right.
and they'll stop at the width or right there short of the book
Site
return?
frontage,
Yeah?
that's right.
Okay, all right. Let's see if I have anything else. That's it. Anybody else? Thank you. Now we'll hear from the applicant.
All right, good evening. My name's Brian Vericchione. I'm a planner at Mackenzie and here on behalf of the Lake Oswego Parks and Recreation Department. I'm joined by Stephen Tuttle, who's a landscape architect at Mackenzie as well. And then we have some other consultants here to help out to answer any questions that may arise later. So we have Matt Butts, civil engineer at Mackenzie, and Ken Reams, who's a transportation engineer at PBS. Thank you, Chair Shearer and Commissioners, for your time this evening. And we're very excited to present the Rasique Park project to you for your consideration. I'd also like to thank Evan and the other staff for their assistance in getting us to this point. As you're well aware, the Lake Oswego code is rather nuanced, and so they've provided guidance that helps make sure that we're following the code as intended. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Stephen, and then I'll have a few remarks later on.
Good evening. I'll jump right in. Going back several years, the intent and purpose of this property and project is to fulfill the long-held vision for the community to have an active recreation park centered on providing athletic fields to the community. You can see here that the property was acquired in 1996 for this intention, and up to this point, the city has taken a series of steps to get us to where we are today, including the site into the UGB, application of the RC and RP overlays, rezoning the site to PNA zone, and more recently including it in the urban service area. We've been doing outreach for this project for over a year, and one of the things that emerged early from the community was these 4 project goals that have helped guide the design we're going to look at tonight. Number 1, provide walking paths in and around the site to allow people to circulate through the site and connect to other areas. Protect the natural features of the site. There's some great natural qualities to the site that have been there for a long time. Maximize athletic field space. The primary goal of the project is to really do that athletic field, and also, to the extent possible, maximize the play area. Going back over the last year and a little bit, we've had a series of meetings, public advisory committee meetings, neighborhood meetings, and community meetings to bring the community up to speed, the neighborhood up to speed on the process, and to get them involved and get their input on the designs. Over the last year, we've hosted a website. You can see at the bottom, RasikPark.com, that has had a chance for people to use that as a landing page to gather information about the project. And more recently, the city, when the skate park became a part of the project, the city launched an additional website to capture the developments of the skate park. Evan already talked about where the site is, so I don't want to belabor that, but we're right here in this middle zone here in the neighborhood to the west, and Lusher Farm is to the east. Okay, so here's the site plan of the park, all rendered up, so we can kind of see what the different components are. Big green rectangle is our athletic field. Up in the upper right is our skate park. Right here is the skate park. Over to the left beyond that is the playground. And then we arrived to the site from Atherton down here, use this driveway, and then this is our parking lot over here. And to the far left, on the west side, this is the natural resource overlay that Evan was talking about. The field itself is going to enable activities, active uses for youth baseball and softball, as well as lacrosse and soccer. The field itself is a synthetic turf product for usability for the site year-round. That was something we talked a lot about, and one of the important drivers for this project was fields that are playable all 4 seasons, and that is the key to making this field playable in the wetter months of the year. The field itself is bounded by a black chain link fence that's 6 feet tall in most instances. As you get around the dugout areas on those corners, it pops up a little bit, and then we'll have netting along that so that stray fly balls and stuff will get captured by that. To the right of the site, between Stafford over here and the site itself, a little hard to see here, but there's some little white contour lines. We're going to push some of the dirt over there and try and berm it up. And that does 2 things. It helps create a buffer of separation for noise between the street and the field. And it also provides a place for people that want to kind of go around to that side and maybe watch the athletic competition from the east side looking in. So that's a little bit about the athletic field. There's dugouts and bullpens on either corner there. Some small bleachers right here. and access around them in concrete there. So you can see just to the top, we're going to pop over to the skate park, which is right up at the top here. So the skate park, couple of things about that. As we went through the community outreach, this was something that became apparent to be important to a lot of users, and then ultimately to the city to help provide a place for skaters in the city of Lake Oswego. And so this became a part of the project last fall, and Parks and Recreation staff have been working with a separate professional skate park consultant to design that specific area. But I want to talk about it in general terms, and that is, rather than having a rectangular thing that looks out of place, they've tried to craft it in a way that sort of nestles into the design vocabulary of the site itself. It's nestled between these two berms here, which you can just barely see, but there's a berm on this side and a berm over here. So that dirt is going to mound up 6, 7, 8 feet, and it's going to kind of nestle this skate park down inside of it. You can see there's a pathway here too, which you can see on the continuation of on other plans, but that'll get you to the drop-off zone in the parking lot so that people that come to the park for the express purpose of using the skate park, they know to kind of hit that path, and that'll take you to the skate park. So this drawing is a little hard to understand because it's flat, so let's look at some fun pictures. This is looking northwest, so we're on top of that berm that we saw and looking at the skate park. It's about 10,000 square feet, and it's got a variety of skill sets built into it. So if you're just learning how to skate, it's good for you. If you're an excellent skateboarder, you've got stuff you can do here too. So it's got a wide variety of skill sets that kind of come with it. The concrete itself is going to be tinted a little bit of a tan color to sort of distinguish it, and then I think that'll be helpful as a wayfinding element that ties into that pathway that we were talking about earlier. So if we look at it from the other side, we're going to go right over here, sit on this berm, and that looks like this. So this is looking towards Stafford, where that white car is, and you can see kind of the size and scale of this berm and how that sort of shields the skate park from some traffic and from the athletic field itself. So if we move just to the west, so I'm going to kind of work from right to left here. So the skate park was just outside of our screen here. As we come to the west, I'm going to talk about the playground. So these two gray boxes, first of all, are this is our maintenance building, which has a little gravel access off to Stafford. And then this is our restroom, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then this is our big playground area. So we heard a lot from the community about the importance of maximizing this play space. And this has evolved quite a bit through the process based on community input. What we're looking at here is a variety of play spaces, which I've got some more pictures. It'll be a little easier to understand, but different surfacing in these areas that provide different opportunities for play. And in general, this is the RC district that we were talking about. This white line is the boundary here. So you've got sort of this kind of nice native stand of trees and vegetation that provide the backdrop for this. And as you kind of go from left to right, it sort of evolves a little bit from more of a natural character with this log play and bark mulch over to some different surfacing and play equipment through here. So what does this all look like and what does it mean? Here's a shot from the parking lot. 4 of the big drivers for this play area were to make it inclusive, a place that kids of all abilities can play, to try and keep that natural character that we heard since the beginning of the project, incorporate components of the playground that make it feel natural and of the place. And then to also have a central play structure, which you can see with the green slide there, and then a variety of other play elements. One of the neighbors in the Palisades neighborhood really helped the project along by taking the idea of a playground to the local elementary schools, and they shared back their findings with City Council and with us, and we were able to take that and move the playground design forward based on some of the things that the actual users might benefit from. So one of those things was the rock wall, which you can see here in the back. And we're really excited about that. And the concept is that it's sort of undulates and evolves as it goes around the back of the site. And it's a place that there'll be little handholds here where kids can climb up and get around on the back of it. But in the foreground here, we've got some log poles, some more natural elements. These are wood elements that kids can play on. This is bark mulch below it. And then we've got an inclusive swing over here, a basket swing that kids of all abilities can use. Some more inclusive play elements here. And then in the background is that large play structure. Here's a view from the entry drop-off plaza, kind of looking in, and what that inclusive spinner might look like or take shape as well as some stationary components. You can see the rock wall that I was talking about in the background here, maybe 7 feet high or so, and it kind of creates a nice backdrop to the play area. And then this is a view as if you were under the shelter on the east side of the playground. And this is sort of an area where smaller children might play. It's close to the shelter. It's closer to the more active area for the ability to keep eyes on kids and things. And then you can see this path that kind of goes around the whole thing. And that's to enable people to kind of easily get up around the backside and kind of get a high point view of the whole play area. The shelter itself is an open air structure. It's 25 feet by 40 feet and enables 6 to 8 picnic tables. We doubled that in size as the design progressed, not doubled, but we increased the size as the design progressed based on what we were hearing from the community. This is what the dugouts would look like. Here's the restroom. It has 4 unisex stalls, really muted colors, sort of a dark gray color to it, a wood soffit, and you can see right behind it the maintenance building, how that might come together as well. And as Evan pointed out, they all have a similar vocabulary, a shed roof, trying to keep them as humble buildings, not spend the park's money and resources on these particular structures, but on things that provide sort of play value and address the ultimate purpose of the park. So we didn't want these to stand out in any way. We did want them to be cohesive in color and scale and things like that. Evan talked about trees a little bit as well. Here's a shot from a year ago of what the site looks like with trees. And what I would point out about this is we've worked to, obviously having a big field in the middle of your site requires the removal of trees. But we've worked hard on the perimeter to try and keep the best trees that we found on the site. And on the left is a madrone tree along the pathway on Stafford, which is a really special tree. And then on the right is a pine tree that backs up to our play area that we sort of designed around to help keep and conserve that natural character. And then here's a shot of the natural area that Evan was referencing as well. This is looking west. So you can see all the deciduous trees here last winter and the stand of firs in the middle, and Atherton tributary kind of works its way down the middle of that thing, and the limits of our development are somewhere more over here where our parking lot starts to kind of come in. So that's the area that we're conserving through those protected areas. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and he's going to talk about some of the other components of the project.
All right, thanks. So just a few words on lighting. The lighting that's proposed on site is relatively modest around the parking lot area to make sure adequate lighting is provided for safety. But the big visible components will be the sports field lightings, and those are going to be 60-foot and 70-foot poles. So the Parks and Recreation staff turned to Musco, which is a company that specializes in sports field lighting, and they've done the design on this. They're proposing cutoff fixtures and shielded lighting, and they're using LED lights, all of which to focus the energy towards the intended location, i.e. the fields themselves, rather than having light pollution that either spreads towards the neighborhood or causes glare towards Stafford Road, or it impedes dark sky as well. So they've paid close attention to that. Evan found a minor issue with some of their analysis, that they measured one of the lighting levels at 3 feet above ground rather than at grade. I'm sure that can be worked out in the final permitting stage, because largely the numbers in the photometrics were where they need to be in order to focus that lighting, as noted. Stormwater is proposed to be infiltrated on site. There's 2 different rain gardens proposed right near Atherton Drive. So that'll handle the runoff from the parking area, from the drive aisles, and from the field itself. It being a synthetic turf field, water's not going to infiltrate at that location. So it'll be collected and then piped over to these rain gardens and then infiltrated.
And those are the shapes in blue there?
Yes,
sort of teal.
on either side of the drive aisle there. Speaking of drive aisle and access, we received a lot of comments during the public outreach phase. Why don't you put the driveway on Stafford? And even park staff wanted to do that as well. But the Lake Oswego Code is rather strict on this, that if you have a site that has 2 abutting streets, you have to go with the lower classification, i.e. Stafford's an arterial, Atherton's a local street. The code says you must go to the lower street. Now, the design has to be smart about that, and so the driveway is proposed as far west as possible in a safe manner in order to provide adequate queuing. And that's in contrast to the site's former use as the dog park, where yes, there was a driveway on Atherton, but it was farther east. It was closer to the roundabout and didn't have that queuing space. So where this is proposed is for adequate queuing, as well as for adequate sightlines, particularly being located on the curve there. And so this maximizes that, as verified by Will Farley and other staff through their review. As parks do not have a parking ratio specified in the Lake Oswego Code, Mackenzie's transportation engineer did a parking study in order to figure out what is the optimal number of spaces. And to do that, they looked at 7 other parks, and they did studies, time of day and what events are happening, and they tallied all that up. And they came up with a ratio that, based on the uses proposed at this location, the magic number was 65 spaces are needed. And what's interesting about the code is that in many uses you have to provide the minimum, and then you can provide a certain number more before there's a maximum. Well, with the parking study, the minimum and the maximum are exactly the same. So what you see is the 65 spaces that were recommended by the transportation engineer for parking. That took a little finagling, but we were able to fit them all in, as well as to meet the fire code requirements for the turnaround. It's proposed as a one-way traffic flow, entering on the right side, looping up to the north, and then coming down to the left side. And then traffic, I imagine you may have some questions on that for Ken when we get to the Q&A part. But at a high level, as previously discussed, the traffic impact study that was performed for this project also analyzed other pending projects, such as the recreation and aquatic facility. And it determined that based on the city's adopted standards, all the city's adopted standards will be met even with this development. And so there were some recommendations in there about maintaining adequate sightlines at the driveway locations to preserve traffic safety. But the proposed, or the anticipated queues at the roundabout were within the city's adopted standards. And so the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the rules by which the application must be judged. So with that, I think we'll wrap things up. Again, we're really excited to be here tonight and to share this project with you, and we're open to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the applicant? John? Or Dwight? One of you?
Yeah, just real quickly, the athletic field, is it restricted use just for softball, soccer games that are organized by the city or whatever, or if it's not being used at a certain time, are people allowed to just like have pickup games on it?
Yes, I believe so.
If that is, yeah, because I've just seen other communities sometimes where they
Yeah.
restrict it to just those, and I would hate to see that.
Yeah, the Parks and Rec Department manages the big schedule and makes sure that there's not conflicts, but yeah, if there's not scheduled events, then it's open to.
Then it's open
use.
for, okay, thank you.
Dwight?
I'm asking questions about drainage. If I understand, you're proposing an impervious subbase for the athletic field. Did you consider a drain-capable sand subbase for that field? And I'm just impressed with the size of that field if it is impervious, plus the 10,000 square feet of concrete impervious skate park. And it looks to me like you're conducting all of that water down to these relatively small rain gardens down by Atherton. Is that the design? And did you consider any alternatives? It just seems to me that that's a lot of impervious area, and there might be some alternatives to mitigate excessive rainfall.
Happy to introduce our civil engineer who can answer that question.
Again, I'm Matt Butts, civil engineer with McKenzie.
Yes.
The synthetic turf field is pervious, but we don't count for on any infiltration due to some of the restrictions we found in the geotech report. So the drain, the stormwater will drain through it, be collected, and there'll be some level of natural infiltration below.
So it is a sand base.
Right, it's just not sand-based, yeah. So it does drain to those rain gardens, they get collected there, and then what doesn't infiltrate in those rain gardens will overflow into the creek area after it's been mitigated for pollution and detention.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Don't go.
Bruce? Randy?
Oh, thank you. You alluded to lighting on the athletic field, suggesting it would not affect nearby residential areas. Could you go into more detail on what design elements or measures you took, not only with respect to the athletic field, but the parking, I think, that's closer to some of the residences on the west and southwest of the site? How are those impacts being mitigated?
Well, I'll start and you can follow up. I know that's something we considered early on, and there was a lot of push and pull about where do we put all this stuff, all the way from the access conversation to the other elements on the site. But in response to your question, we know the lights are a concern for many people, and that was one supporting reason to kind of shift the field to the right and have that parking area to the left, which helps to push that light a little bit further away from the residents. And then, as you can see, the trees in the tributary area are helpful in starting to screen some of that light as well. So as a design, we recognized the challenge there, and we tried to move the field a little bit as much as we could. And that's why one of the reasons we put the parking where it is, so that we could help keep that light trespass contained on the site and further away from the neighbors.
Yeah, to add on to that, lighting height and lighting selection makes a big difference about how those impacts could be perceived, and so that's why the shielded type lighting is proposed. I don't know how the number crunching works, but the lighting designers have these software that they can input the height, the light fixture, and all that in the wattage, and it computes how much light is located. And so it's probably really hard to read on your site plan, but there's a plan there, little tiny numbers throughout the whole site that show the lighting levels, and basically it drops off quickly once you get past that parking area. Because not only for the residents, but it being a natural area, we don't want to illuminate that thing like it's the New Jersey Turnpike.
Thank you.
None.
I just had a couple. So underneath the field, are there drain lines to carry the stormwater?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, so the whole park is going to be taken on with just the two gardens, storm gardens?
Yeah, so they drain to the right of the field, and there's a collector pipe on the right side of the field, and that drains to the pond below there, the kidney bean shape, and then there's the stormwater from the north of the site gets piped to the left pond triangular shape at the bottom. That triangular shape one in the lower left is about 30 feet lower than the skate park, so there's quite a lot of drop as but that's kind of the cut right there from top right to lower left, kind of how the site wants to fall. So that's why that one's kind of placed down there.
I saw that it perked pretty well, so it drained well on the test pits.
Yeah, and I know our engineers even used a pretty conservative factor of safety as recommended by the geotech engineer, which was 3 to 4. So it's conservative, which is good, especially given the storms with the changing weather.
Okay, that's all I have. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next order of business is parties in favor of the application. I only have 2 people signed up. Okay. So now is there anybody that wants to testify that hasn't signed up? Or against? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to parties in opposition of the application, and the first one would be Rick Cook.
Good evening. We had requested that Randy Yamada go before myself. Is that a possibility that can happen, Kat?
Yeah, that's fine with me. We had him turned.
Okay, I would appreciate that. So if Randy's out there.
Okay, Randy. Sorry. Our paperwork said RJ was going first.
Yeah. First of all, we're in opposition to not the park as a whole, but only certain elements of the park that we've already documented many times throughout this process, starting from the very early past meeting.
Just for the record, you're speaking on behalf of the Stafford CPO. Is that?
Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of the PAC, the Rasique Park PAC. I'm a member of that. Okay. Also, the Stafford Hamlet, which is a separate organization from the Stafford Tualatin Valley CPO, and I'm a board member of the Stafford Tualatin Valley CPO also.
Okay, so I'm going to give 10 minutes for that's the full neighborhood association.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. I can't tell. Well. So, one of the things that I asked initially was, why is the application, why is a conditional use application needed for this park since it's already zoned PNA? And no one gave me no one would give me an answer. I know there are specifics to that. And so if any of you could give me a reason. Evan?
Yeah,
No?
so it's a major park improvement, and our code classifies that as a major development, and that requires a conditional use permit.
Isn't it also required? Isn't it required because it's adjacent to different use, residential use? Isn't that the Isn't that part of the criteria in this case?
Not for a major park improvement, the criteria is.
Any major park improvement, or
Yeah, if it classifies a major
or
park
if
improvement.
it's, or if it's or if the uses are different. If there's a major improvement at a different use, isn't that a requirement? I'm just asking because I'm not sure of the way they translate your ordinance.
Well, the code has we have a use table that lists all the permitted and conditional uses in all zones. And in the P&A zone, you're right, it is zoned parks and natural area, but the code prescribes a major park improvement.
Major
and other
as
a
conditional use. So that's
and I think it's because,
that's
as
the
you
actual
said,
criteria.
they tend to be located in residential areas, so it would make sense to do
Exactly.
that, even if it is zone parks, natural areas.
Or, yes, close to residential areas. So I think what I'm getting at is that the conditional use is required because of compatibility with the differing use, the differing residential use. And conditional use requires conditions, separate conditions for development that would be special in the case of park adjacent to residential areas. And so I think that is, and conditional use means there are going to be conditions on the use. And as far as conditions, I'm thinking that, protections, buffers, maybe limitations on lighting, timing of use. And I think those things should be incorporated into the actual permission that's granted to the developer. And otherwise, the developer could have his own concept of how it should be used. And that concept might not be compatible with the concept of how the adjacent residents, other businesses should use it. And so that's why I'm asking about that. And I think the other comment I have on this process, I've already submitted my comments, and there's been tremendous documentation from the P&A, from the Hamlet, from the CPO on what we think and what we would like to have in the kind of park. And I think our ideas essentially were not listened to or dismissed throughout this entire process. And as far as fitting into the way the comprehensive plan and the goals work, it doesn't fit because the residents are supposed to have a say because they live next to the thing. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. And so I think in that sense, the process wasn't fulfilled here. And one of the interactions and this is not just for you, this is for the knowledge of the community as a whole. The city leaders, the city workers, the residents, and the outlying areas. And one of the interactions I noticed with city leadership and others, some of the commissions, is that their leadership's asking dismissive questions of the commenting residents. And I don't think that's appropriate because the commenting residents are not doing that kind of thing. They're making comments about specifics, about, oh, we'd rather have a family park, we'd rather have natural turf, we'd rather have no lighting, those kinds of comments. And I think that sort of thing quashes the community interaction that should be happening here. And so I would like to cede the rest of my time to Rick Cook, who is a former athletics coach, Stafford Hamlet board member. He's been the chair of the Stafford Hamlet. He's on the Clackamas County Committee for Community Involvement. He's the owner and restorer of an NPS-listed historic farm. He's Lake Oswego Heritage Council honoree, and he's been a Stafford community leader for more than a decade. And I think that you should really listen to what he has to say carefully. And so that's why I'm ceding the rest of my time to him. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And to that point, Mr. Chairman, organizations cannot cede time, only individuals can cede time. He spoke on behalf of 3 different organizations for the 10 minutes, and only individuals that have 5 minutes can cede their 5-minute time. So you can't do it in chunks either. It's not like the last 3 minutes type thing. So,
Okay.
So in any event, Mr. Cook then would have 5 minutes as an individual.
Okay, I believe Randy spoke for the Stafford Tualatin Valley Community Planning Organization, and I was going to speak for the Stafford Hamlet, and that's what it submitted today.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so you're representing an organization?
Correct, Stafford Hamlet.
Okay.
So you have 10 minutes.
Okay, great, appreciate that, and hopefully I can share this with you. So just very quickly, I appreciate the time that you've given us to talk about this, and I have submitted this document, but just wanted to be sure that it got explained a little bit. So there are the 3 basic areas in which the Stafford Hamlet was concerned about. There's a letter that was sent out, I believe it was 6/8/21, that said, here's what the Stafford Hamlet would like to embrace and encourage that the county the city looks at in regard, since we are neighbors to you and we've worked hard to work with the city on creating partnerships and things. And the fact that Lusher Farm is actually in the Stafford Hamlet until it gets absorbed into the urban growth boundary, we like to think of them as still part of us. So as we go through this, the parking, it's been a big thing, issue for us because, especially myself, I live right across the street from it, but as you can read the documentation from numerous different meetings, statements, all the way through, if you look at, I think I'll just cut to the chase here, where if you look at Azalea Field, which is a smaller field than what this field is going to be, it has an active dog park and a passive dog park. It does not have a skate park. It doesn't have a playground area. It doesn't have a picnic area. It doesn't have the sensitive land, yet they have 119 spaces over there, and that's not counting the arch at the top as you come in there where cars always park. So in looking at the fact that there's not going to be a lot of bike riders that come to this field, I went up and parked and watched at the Azalea Field about the number of kids that show up on bikes to go to practice. Very few. So as you go through and look at that, I think to put it in a nutshell, in one of the PAC meetings, I asked, what is the number of people involved in the skate park? Because I'm not sure that the 3 skate parking spaces is accurate. So I said, what's the number at a maximum amount of time that somebody could be using the skate park? And well, Zach said that it would be 50, but not all 50 would be using it at the same time. So 15 to 20 people would be using it. It could be 50 people. So the next question was, what do you project as parking needs for the skate park? Well, they use 0.20 space per person using the skate park, which would in turn say that if 50 people are there, they need 10 parking spaces. And then you can read the response that, well, parking responses above is in general, because there's really no study that does that. but there would need to be an assessment. So I'm not sure what that assessment is or where it's been done, other than say, oh, we only need 3 parking spaces. So I think the numbers there are very concerning. So that little stick of, and here's just a picture of what's going on. So the active skate park at Azalea Field, once again, it's going to be a smaller skate park and not have all these other elements to it. So almost half of what would be allowed, or what is currently at Azalea Park, which is a smaller park, it just doesn't make sense. And you were talking earlier about how is that going to impact us? Well, here is a picture from when the temporary dog park was there. And as you can see, here is a no parking sign. There's 2 sandwich board signs, no parking, yet everyone is parked along the street. So in talking with the Palisades Neighborhood Association, we were saying it would be great if, I know this park's going in. I don't know how much changes you can still make. Don't know that. I'm hoping, and the Stafford Hamlet's hoping. But if they had an early ticket and tow signage and enforcement piece, that would help with that piece. Moving along real quick. Stafford Hamlet has endorsed the Azalea Agricultural Heritage Trail Plan that was option 4 that never got looked at or was never put to the community for a vote, and I'm not quite sure why that whole process wasn't followed. But as you can read, the development of the park is going to stay outside the design sensitive lands. Well, if that's true, then if they're using 9.9 acres for how many parking stalls can go in, what you can do, what you can't do, if you take those 2 acres out for the sensitive lands that they're not going to spend any money in, they're just going to say, we're going to put up the fence and we're going to leave it alone, then are there some issues there that need to be accounted for? And I think I've got that targeted someplace here. Well, I don't. Anyway, and then so talking about the utility piece, we have assumed the pump station wet well is deep enough. I haven't been convinced or seen any documentation yet that that is a functional element to this development. They're going to bore underneath Pecan Creek. And yeah, the access piece where they start the boring and the exit piece are outside the zone, but they're going underneath and running at the length of those areas too, which is, you can see here, which is in the red. So you can see they talked earlier about the 2 protected areas. Well, most of it is in protected areas, as you can see there. So I'm not convinced that that has been addressed to the proper standards, I guess. And also in talking about the wildlife corridor and the sensitive lands, Metro has done just finished last spring a 2021 ecological assessment of the area, saying that, you know, it was a target area and they're putting the stormwater and the driveway right where the wildlife go. So now you have a stormwater that you are going to force animals to go through. You've got barriers, retaining walls, and that's going to force them out of the area or nowhere to be seen. And I don't have a access number of a code number that would, but I'm sure one's in there. Last piece is the traffic. Just to touch base with it, there was a 2007 IGA signed by the county and the Lake Oswego that dealt about the roundabout, and Mike Besner and the county was working on it. Yes, the county is responsible for the roundabout. What they are doing from 372 feet south of the roundabout is where they're going to widen the road using county dollars to put in bike lanes headed both south. There's going to be a roundabout. It's at 60% design. It's going to go in at Childs, left turn lane at Johnson Road, a possible no left turn coming out onto Stafford, where everybody would be coming back up into the Childs roundabout and then headed south, which is a good thing. So many things are happening down that way. But the accumulative fact, and that's I think what the chair was talking about, is if you look at what they're going to do at the golf course, what they've done at Receipt property, what they're going to do at Lusher Farm down the road, it's an accumulative piece. Our family's been here 122 years and have seen the developing go things. And I don't have a problem with the park. I have a problem with as much stuff as they're cramming into it. You don't build it and then fix it after. So, you know, they've got the ARP money coming in from the roundabout north, but they're not doing anything to say, okay, yeah, the county has no money to do that. So that's 5 to 8 years out. The last thing I have, and I'll throw at you real quickly, is per code 50-06-007. Bottom line, we asked for entrance on the current driveway that goes in there. It was a gravel driveway that's been there since 1936 that went up to the Star property. And the county said, well, or the city said, you can't do it. It needs to come off at lower. Well, if that is true, then how come we have entrance to the golf course on Stafford Road? And I know with the LORAC going in up there, the swimming pool, the park, all the things they're doing there, there is going to be an entrance coming off of Overlook. But does that mean they're going to close the Stafford Road piece? And if not, why the double standard? So as you go through, hopefully you can take a look at those pieces. We've tried to work real hard to be proactive in this, and it always seems like we've been reactive because we've, you know, put ideas out there and they just get shut down. So once again, I think it's the cumulative impact of the traffic, the skate park. There's really no final design yet. And one last piece, everybody south of Atherton Drive is on a well. Mossy Bray Water District, which is just before the river down there, there's 50 homes in that water district. All this runoff is going to end up in Pecan Creek. If it's a heavy flood, it's all going there. Thought being like, why don't we recapture that and put that through the drinking fountains at the park? How many of you want your kids drinking the water going out of the runoff of the field, the parking lot, the streets, to go back into the water system there? Well, that's what's going to happen down the road. Yes, it'll be treated, it'll be filtered, but if it's good enough to put in the creek, why is it not good enough to use on the park? So with that, appreciate your time. And last little piece here are the two quotes from Mike Besner, the Assistant Director of Transportation at Clackamas County, that said, we have no money. It's going to be 5 to 8 years out before we can do anything. And just in case I get dropped off from the Zoom thing, I'd like the record to stay open, or the possibility to say that in case something comes up towards the end of the meeting. So I appreciate your time, and I probably went over a bit, but I do appreciate what you do and the volunteering to be on this committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any questions for Mr. Cook? Okay, thank you. Now we have Amy Miller.
Good evening. So I'm pretty hoarse, so if you can't hear me, I'm sorry. I'm representing the PNA. I'm an area rep. I've lived in Lake Oswego for 46 years. Been a taxpayer. Sorry.
So you're representing the Palisades Neighborhood Association? Mm-hmm. You have 10 minutes, correct?
Right.
And so I've lived here for 46 years. I go by Lusher Farm all the time, maybe 2 and 3 times a day. So one of the things that we've said tonight that I'm curious about because of all of our PNA meetings is when exactly was that traffic study done? My understanding was that it was done during the pandemic. Am I correct?
Evan? Wasn't the traffic study done last year?
So that is...
Let me see the date. All right, so the recent one is April 7th, 2022.
Okay.
So part of the reason that the traffic supposedly is only like 6 cars or not a big deal is really very askew. As you know, people were at home, kids weren't at school, and if you go there, I noticed when everybody was being introduced that some people haven't even been out to that property. And like I said, I've lived in that neighborhood. My kids went to all the schools out there, Palisades, Waluga, and Lake Ridge. And I can tell you there's tons and tons of cars. And if you haven't been there at either 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 5, 6, whatever, or during games, it's a mess. So I understand what Rick Cook is talking about. So I served way back in 2008, when the city said that we needed to do a comprehensive Palisades Neighborhood Association plan. I served on that committee for 5 years and did all the legwork, road work, messaging, canvassing, whatever. And that comprehensive plan that the PNA put together really has not been really very diligently looked at, as somebody else brought up, I believe the chair. The character statement for the Palisades Neighborhood Association represents Lake Oswego's largest neighborhood in both geography and population. We are a family-friendly, secluded, safe community area where people feel connected to others, and that we're trying to stay connected rather than disconnected. We treasure the neighborhood's age, diversity, and its excellent schools with exemplary parent participation. The vision for the future, which is obviously now, we wish to promote continuity of the character of this area, the Palisades neighborhood. The quality of life that we have in Palisades. We want future development, which is now to meet the demand for growth while preserving biological diversity and natural ecosystems. And most of my presentation really has to do with what Rick also alluded to, which is the natural ecosystems. So if you really haven't walked out there at any time, you probably have no idea where Pecan Creek is, because somebody mentioned it was the Atherton runoff. Au contraire. Okay, there's deer, there are eagles, there are red hawks, there are foxes, there are beavers on Pecan Creek. And if you've noticed in your notes from past times, that's pretty unusual. So tonight, for the first time I've heard about the drainage. Rick's spot on in terms of the wells, et cetera, for drainage. Our last neighborhood meeting, somebody brought up the idea of having non-turf fields so that it would drain better. You know, I know you want to use it 365 days out of the year, but just that's something that would be nice to have as an alternate. Not every school, not every university, especially the big ones, aren't always on turf. So that's a misjudgment. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that apparently, as well documented, the council this year, the city council that we all voted for, adopted a sustainability plan and climate action. Not too sure if most of this stuff really meets all of that. All the concrete, all the lighting, et cetera, et cetera. So I charge you to think about that in terms of sustainability. As you know, excuse me, Palisades goes from the top of Cook's Butte all the way to the lake. So that's a huge area that drains and that is critical, obviously, for the whole area to keep the lake and its preservation pristine, as well as places like Pecan Creek or even the Tualatin River. So our neighborhood objectives back in the day when we did this with everybody in the neighborhood were to preserve the trees and the neighborhood's wooded green character, protect neighborhood views, maintain the natural beauty of the lake, as well as the recreational opportunities it provides, and retain the natural quality of Cook's Butte Park. We began with rural roots, excuse me, as you mentioned about the Carter House. If you have no idea what the Carter House is with the sidewalks, et cetera, it's a death trap, as you mentioned. It's a wonder that somebody really hasn't been killed there, whether it's a kid or an adult trying to navigate that whole area. The Pioneer Cemetery, the historic rural road of Stafford, all of that is something that's very special. And as Rick said, we're not against the idea of the park at all. Obviously, all of our taxes are paid for it. But we hate to do things backwards. And one of the meetings that we were at, somebody said, well, we can't change anything. Well, how are we doing down at George Rogers Park? I think we kind of messed that up too. There's a big battle of parking, et cetera, with the pickleball courts that were changed from tennis. The neighbors are up in arms, and nobody really did anything ahead of time to check that stuff out. This is way more massive and way more detrimental. If you don't know, also, the toll bridge obviously is going to happen, supposedly, which is going to massively affect that area from Stafford all the way out to West Lynn. The mayor of West Lynn is totally aware that people are going to cut through, come through Rosemont, end up at the traffic circle that we're talking about over by the Rasique property, and then come in or out of Lake Oswego. If you don't think that's going to be a nightmare, you're crazy. There's some days on a Friday afternoon sometimes that if you're at the bottom of State Street, it takes 5 lights to get up probably to your house. I don't know where you live, but you mentioned Atherton. I live a little bit below that. 5 times, and we don't even have the swim center. How many people are going to be at the swim center? How many people are going to be at the recreation place? So we have a lot to worry about. Some of the LOC numbers are the lighting numbers. LOC 50-06-004.3. It talks about the lighting standards, performance lighting, and prescriptive lighting. I hope that falls into that case. Use table, LOC 50-03-002. They're permitted in the P&A zone. However, activities defined as major park improvements, as Randall mentioned, are a conditional use. LOC 50-03, setbacks, lot coverage, use tables, mitigation. Mitigation for Pecan Creek, nobody's even mentioned that, even though that's preserved, as well as the big stand of Doug firs. You need to probably go out and take a peek at that perhaps before you get a vote. I can't imagine that we would lose that area. As a longtime inhabitant here, raising my kids, working here, working for the city, recreation is in my blood. I've done sports all my life. It has nothing to do with sports. It has to do with preserving our neighborhood. And as somebody mentioned, we did this P&A plan. We worked on it. The thing is this big, and nobody apparently even knows where it is, other than those of us who originally did it. That's pretty sad. Sarah Selden helped us with it, along with some other people, obviously, that were in the planning department. Just a couple of FYIs. Like I said, the drainage into Pecan Creek, pretty significant. The other thing about parking, 65 parking spaces. Those of you that don't live in our neighborhood, guess who parks over at Azalea Field from September to mid-June during the day? Any guesses? Lake Ridge High School students. Give that a try in the park. How's that going to work? You go, oh, well, they're not supposed to be there. Really? It's the same on Treetop, et cetera. So I think that's another big concern that needs to be peeked at, just me personally. The other thing is, just as an FYI about lighting, because we really feel that that's an infraction for the wildlife. I drove through that area on July 3rd, July 4th. Both sets of lights at Rasique Field were on all night till 10 o'clock or 10:15. Nobody on the field. And same at the Lake Ridge Baseball Diamond. So you can't tell me that that is not going to happen, unfortunately. If we could, I would be thrilled. And I've seen that happen many times. So hopefully you consider all these vital things, because our neighborhood is very special. The P&A people have worked very hard to work together with the city and be proactive. And we just hope that you make the right decisions on some of these massive decisions for all of us, so that the future stays as the Palisades. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Amy?
I had a question. Are there specific elements of the Palisades Neighborhood Association plan relating to traffic that you feel are not being properly addressed in this application that you can identify?
I think Rick mentioned one of them. For example, the access. to and from off of Stafford, kind of a double standard. I know some of my neighbors that are up in the Atherton, Ridge Point area, other than Rick, he's the most affected, of course, is people are very worried that kids are going to skate perhaps from the top of that area down into the park. And we already know that Westview and Green Tree and some of those areas are called no skate zones. They've got signs. So they're very concerned about that safety because it's a very steep hill. So that's a concern. The other thing is parking. It's, if you don't know, it's a mess already and it hasn't even been built. It won't be that big of a deal like tomorrow because the kids are out of school, but the kids park in that neighborhood all over, so there'll be a huge amount of overflow. In terms of the traffic, we've had several times with the traffic engineer, or the police actually, to come out during the day to see what Treetop looks like with all the parked cars, because you can't even get into your driveway if you live there. And when school gets out or in the morning, it's so dangerous, it's unbelievable. So that whole area of overlook that you mentioned to Stafford already is jammed up, even with traffic lights. So we've got, videos of people over this, the middle lane, kids going 25 miles an hour. It's scary. So yeah, traffic is already a mess. So they're very concerned. The other thing, of course, is, as you all know, the fire trucks and the safety getting in and out. It's pretty scary.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Kat, did I miss anybody? Okay, anybody else want to testify that's here? All right. Applicant's rebuttal.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to mention probably some of the more technical stuff, and Stephen could talk about some of the design considerations. First of all, with respect to the Palisades neighborhood plan, the applicant did submit some fairly extensive analysis of that plan in the applicant's narrative. So, and in that demonstrated how the proposal was consistent with adopted goals and policies for the neighborhood plan. Staff, their determination was that those were not regulatory, and so they didn't really delve into them in their staff report, but there is a fair amount of documentation in the record with respect to that already. Regarding the pump station depth, I know Rick's brought that up before. Frankly, that's, even if the depth is not as assumed, it's a solvable problem. Based on the as-built drawings, we believe that gravity sewer is feasible, but if it's not feasible, then a pump station can be installed, a small local pump station to get the sanitary flows over to that larger pump station. Let's see here. Stormwater quality was brought up and concerns about that runoff. What I failed to explain, but is in the record, is how the rain gardens will work. Those not only will infiltrate the water, but they have plantings in them that are designed to clean the water before it enters the soil. And the stormwater design and report was analyzed by the city's third-party consultant who are experts in the stormwater field, and they determined that we've demonstrated consistency with the city's water quality standards for that. The parking concerns that were raised, Mackenzie's transportation engineers analyzed the parking based on the worst case option, which is when on a Saturday, first of all, a weekend, so we don't have to worry about the high school students parking for Lake Ridge. But it would be the moment when when soccer game's almost finished and people are arriving for the next one, so there's sort of that overlap. So that the calculations were based on that most intense scenario. And then once the first game finishes up, people drive off and more parking spaces are available for other uses as well, other park users. Stephen, maybe you want to talk about some of the other items?
Yeah, I would mention that these are all really important considerations that we recognize have, been a challenge for the project to address. There's a lot of demand on the site for a variety of things from a variety of users. And what we hope to have achieved and what we think we've done is come up with a creative solution to incorporate as many of the components that we're hearing from the broader community and incorporate those into the site through the placement of them on the site and the design of them. So these are all important concerns that we've heard tonight and have worked hard to address them as best as we can and develop and come up with a project that's best for the city and the community and accomplishes all the goals that we've heard.
Any questions for the applicant? I have one. Evan, can you bring back, or Kat, can you bring up the site plan? Rendering? Keep going.
So what are you asking for?
It might have been in the other presentation.
It's the colored one where we were talking about the storm drains?
Oh, that was in your
That was
presentation.
in our presentation, yeah.
Sorry to make you do this. I can start my question. So in my mind, the biggest problems for me, for the traffic, I think traffic's going to be an issue. And I think you're right. The entrance isn't where it was for the dog park. It's about 15, 20 feet further west. But you'll have the same problem when people pull in to drop off their kids and want to just, they got a soccer practice, they're going to get rid of them, or a baseball practice. There isn't any real area right there as they pull in to drop off. I mean, I just think and maybe it's clouded by the trees there, but as you pull in, there should be an area for cars to get over and drop their kids off, and not one car, and still have room for people to get by.
Great point, and we definitely considered that solution. You can see right where that tree is, there is a pull out there. If you need to unload your baseball equipment and kick a kid out of the car, they can go to that lower right baseball dugout. But the parking lot is designed so that you can loop, and so you can go and you meander and you have sort of instead of just a rectangular parking lot with a straight shot, we tried to give it a little curve and bend so it fits into the natural character a little bit more. But circulation-wise, you loop through the parking lot and then you're out. Moreover, that pull out at the lower part of the screen, there just wasn't enough room to do what you're suggesting. We explored that where, hey, maybe you could just spin around right there and get back out, but it wasn't penciling.
Yeah, the issue there was the proximity to the natural areas that we were trying to preserve and protect. So rather than expand the asphalt farther to the west, the drive aisle was kept at the width as proposed.
Yeah, and what you don't see there is the grades. It steepens up from the right side of that pullout to the field, I think about 7 feet, and then it drops off. That little white line is actually a little wall on the stormwater side, so there's just not a lot of give in the grade. And additionally, just trying to balance the resources we're spending on the project. Every dollar we're paying for asphalt, we're taking from some other valuable component of the project as well. And you can see there's a lot of great park activities here that we want to be cognizant of.
So the other question I had is, the sanitary sewer runs from, as Mr. Cook showed on his drawing, so you're basically going to run it all in the resource area.
Boring under it. Mm-hmm.
It will go under, yeah. So there'll be a bore pit on the west side and the east side, and another one sort of on the south. So it'll be an L-shaped alignment with a bore pit at the point of the L. And so the reason for that was to avoid disturbing the ground area within the RC and the RP zone. and to minimize environmental impacts.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Evan?
Yes. Is Mr. Cook still online? All right, make sure he can do that. Excuse me. Prior to closing the public hearing, any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. If a request is made, the public hearing shall be either continued to date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing to enable additional written evidence or testimony to be submitted, and the commission will establish the period for any rebuttal written evidence to be submitted. Is there a request to present additional evidence?
I would like to request that, please.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cook, on behalf of the Stafford Hamlet, I believe, has requested the continuance, and it's not under the statute and the code. There's no discretion to the commission. The question to the commission is whether you leave the record open for, at the next meeting, to receive more oral testimony and any written materials that are submitted, or whether you close it for oral testimony and then just receive written comments in this interim. If you opt for that, the schedule per the statute requirements and the time schedule we have to leave it 7 days open for additional written materials. So that would be next Wednesday, and we'll talk about time on that. And then typically we leave 2 days for rebuttal information, which would be then Friday. So you would get the rebuttal information late, close of business time Friday. And then the hearing would be on Monday. And I don't know, Jessica might talk about whether you get a staff memo at all with that, but anyway. So the first decision, I guess, is whether you want to leave it open for additional written evidence only or have it continued for additional oral and written materials.
Okay.
Then we'll talk about the dates if we need to go that way.
So when this has happened in the past, since a lot of us are new, we generally have just taken written testimony only, as I remember, Randy.
Yes, I agree, and I think that would be appropriate in this case.
So if there is an agreement or a little motion to just take written testimony only, I would appreciate that. Or is it at the discretion of the chair?
If you have a consensus, no, but it'd be a motion, but if you have a consensus to leave it written only, I'd like to go ahead and talk about the dates, and we can include that in the full motion.
Oh, okay.
So.
Wait a minute. Is that pretty much everybody's just nod? Okay, yeah.
Okay, all right.
One guy's didn't, so yeah, it's a consensus.
All right. Since we need to leave the record open for 7 days, that would be Wednesday, July 13th. We would propose a 3 p.m. cutoff time rather than the regular 5 for the reason I'm going to tell you in a moment. And then 2 days later is Friday, the 15th. And we propose a 3 p.m. cutoff time on that as well to allow 2 hours for staff to gather up the materials and then send it out before close of day. So 3 p.m. both times for consistency, doesn't confuse people. So that would be, the motion then would be to continue to leave the record open for written materials only. New information may be submitted by Wednesday 13th at 3 p.m. and any rebuttal information to that written material may be submitted by the 15th at 3 p.m.
Is there a motion?
I would move along the lines of City Attorney Boone's comments that we take written evidence only of new evidence on the application, that there be a July 13th, 3 p.m. cutoff for new evidence, and a July 15th, excuse me, that was July 13th, 3 p.m. cutoff for new evidence, July 15th, 3 p.m. cutoff for rebuttal evidence, if any.
Okay, we have a second. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes, you do.
Kat?
Shear,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangre,
Yes.
Lyon,
Yes.
Dews,
Yes.
Motion carries.
And for the audience and anybody who may be intending to submit material, I just can't stress strongly enough, somehow it never is heard, okay, that the purpose of the rebuttal evidence for that 2-day period is to address only new material that is submitted by by July 13. It is not to address any material that might have been presented today, okay? So it has to have been in the submission by July 13 in order to do the rebuttal evidence. You don't get to rebut the oral testimony here today.
Thank you. All right, we move on to our next order of business. Make everybody happy in the city of Lake Oswego. We're going to have an election for a new chairman and vice chairman. Are there any nominations?
I could just say it cannot be Chair Shearer. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I will say, there is no term limit on vice chair, so he is not disqualified from being vice chair, but yes, he's served 2 consecutive terms, so this round you are disqualified. It doesn't prevent you from being chair again in the future at some point.
I'd like to nominate Randy Arthur as the succeeding chair.
Second.
Beautiful. Do we vote on that individually?
Well, you might call, if there are other nominations, then we'll,
Any other nominations?
hearing none, then you would vote on that.
Okay.
Shear,
Yes.
Arthur,
I'll abstain.
Smith, oh, sorry, Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangre,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Dews.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to say, Chair Shearer, you've done a fantastic job, an artful and gifted job as chair. And so you have really set a standard that'll be hard to follow. But thank you for your service.
You'll be great.
Thank you.
Okay, for vice chair, any nominations? Let somebody else do it.
Immediate past Chair Shearer, you're declining the nomination for vice chair.
Yes.
Is there another nomination for
Mr.
vice
Smith?
chair? Kirk Smith, who's excused tonight. The nomination has been made for his service as vice chair.
Second, that sounds good.
You got the gavel.
Oh, no, I think you're still
Sorry.
under Robert's Rules of Order.
Shear,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangre,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Dews.
Yes.
Motion passes. Jessica, is there anything else?
Sorry, couldn't get my microphone to work. Just for the management update, of course, we have a meeting on July 18th. We have the golf course application, that will come before you next, and of course, this continued hearing. At this point, we don't currently have anything scheduled for the first meeting in August, but there is a high likelihood we will get something scheduled for that. We are right now scheduled to have the Lake Oswego Aquatic Center on the second meeting in August. That could change, but that is what it is scheduled for as of right now. Those are the only meetings that we have coming up, and I will certainly keep you apprised if anything changes.
Great. Any other business? Meeting adjourned.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your service.
Can you be back in?